I am Mayson. I'm the Director of Alumni and Donor Relations at Tennessee Wesleyan University, and I'm so thankful to have both of you with me today so I can ask you a couple questions. I'll let you all introduce yourselves, and if you could just tell me a little bit about what you do in Knoxville's nurse practitioners. And you can even, if you want, go ahead and tell me about the path it took for you all to get there and your graduation year, because it's always important to remember when.
We had to think back about that one, yeah.
Stop. So I'll let you all introduce yourselves.
Okay, go ahead, Danielle.
Okay. I'm Danielle Mote. I'm a nurse practitioner. I attended Tennessee Wesleyan, graduating in May of 2007, the School of Nursing.
Mm-hmm.
I took the scenic route into nursing school. I was a mom first, and then finished, the credits, and then went into nursing school, and then graduated, and then worked as a nurse for a few years, and then obtained my master's of nursing, family nurse practitioner, and I've been working ever since. And
yeah, so I'm Ginny Brown. I graduated from Tennessee Wesleyan in 2008, a year after Danielle, or a year before Danielle.
Year after.
Yes.
Yeah.
And same, I had my kids first, then went to nursing school, and then I worked at Park West. We actually both worked at Park West for a little while. I worked in the ICU about 4 years before I started back at Lincoln Memorial for my master's, and have been with Stat Care ever since. I became a nurse practitioner. So we both worked in the hospital for many years, and now we're in the pulmonary clinic.
Okay, awesome. And are you both originally from Knoxville?
No, I'm originally from North Carolina. I was born and raised in North Carolina, and I moved here about 20 years ago.
Okay, where in North Carolina? Sorry, I'm very familiar with the
Elon College area.
Elon?
Yeah. Graduated from Western Alamance.
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely know that area. I have a lot of teammates that I played with in college that live up there. So that's
What
really
did you play?
I played soccer.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I went to college.
I am from Memphis, Tennessee, and I actually played softball in college. I played in Missouri, so that's why. And then, I went to University of Memphis, and then we moved out here about 15 years ago, something like that.
Wow, that's awesome. That's so cool. Where did you go to school before? Did you go to Tennessee Wesleyan before, or did you come
after? Yeah, so I went to University of Memphis first.
Right.
Then went to Tennessee. I worked for a little while. I got a degree in exercise science. Then went back to nursing school later on.
Okay, and so you both said you had kids. How many kids do you have, and what are their ages? I'm curious.
Okay, I have two daughters. One is 20. She just finished her sophomore year at UT, and my youngest is 18, graduating high school.
Wow.
I have three. I have a 17-year-old and a girl, and then the two boys are 9 and 10.
Oh, awesome. Cool.
And fun fact, Ginny and I, our lives have kind of paralleled each other, but we didn't become friends really until we started working in clinic together in the last probably year and a half or so. So I went to Tennessee Wesleyan, and she was the year behind me. So we would see each other. We saw each other at Park West. Yeah. We went to LMU, but we were not there at the same time. So she went to LMU right behind me, and then we both were with Stat Care. She came behind me, but we were at different campuses with Stat Care. And then we kind of developed this great friendship when we talk about, how we got to this point. It's just like this really weird similarity.
It's very similar stories.
Yeah, it's very cool.
That's awesome. I love that. Those are just.
And then we went to New Jersey together, so there you go. Now we're really close.
And okay, so the New Jersey thing was all Danielle. We have another friend of ours that used to work with Stat Care that is in New York, or actually New Jersey.
She's doing South Jersey.
Yeah, South Jersey. And so she told Danielle about it, and Danielle was like, I think this is something that, I want to do. And I said, well, you're not doing this alone. I need to come with you.
So one day after I turned all my stuff in, she turned in all her stuff, and we got to
As soon as I made sure that our work was okay with her going, then I said, okay, I'm going to go too. And they were like, awesome. They were very supportive.
That's awesome. And how
they just let us take sick time.
Oh, yeah. And how long were you guys there?
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yeah, it's 2-week contracts. They were crisis contracts is what they call them. They needed immediate help, and it would be for 2-week increments.
So
And all my family actually is up there. I was raised in North Carolina, but I have no family in North Carolina.
Oh,
So,
okay. Wow.
yeah, everybody's up in New Jersey and New York. And so, and my cousin and her family just got over COVID, and, you know, so it's just like one of those things I was like, you know, and my parents were telling me how bad it was up there, my brothers, and I was like, gosh, you know, we could probably help. But our idea of going up there to help was like, you know, gosh, we have all this pulmonary background, and maybe we can like help them with their pulmonary patients while they're trying to take care of COVID. But that turned out to be something very different than what we saw. So
what did it look like for you guys those 2 weeks? Like I guess, of course, you did a whole lot of things. We could spend forever talking about all the things you did, I'm sure, in 2 weeks, and you probably don't want to relive all of them. But some of the things that you all did, kind of like what a normal day for you guys would look like, or I guess it wasn't really normal, but what it looked like for you all just day in, day out.
Yeah, well, so the first day we were in shock. There was multiple, not just the pulmonologist, but the intensivist, the ER doc. You know, a lot of the doctors were just so exhausted. They were on, you know, day 35 of working, you know, till 2 a.m. And so they were just glad to see us. And we were like, wait a second, we were trying to figure out our role because we were new to them too. So the first day we were kind of getting our feet wet, and we kind of narrowed it down to 2 specific pulmonologists that we work with. Although they could have used so much more help. So we each paired with our own pulmonologist, and they had a list of probably 60 or more patients.
Wow.
And it was just, I mean, it was unreal. And so we just would go in, print our list, hit the ground running, and see literally as many patients as we could to help them in our 12-hour shift. And we would, when they got to the hospital, we would round with them, and we'd have them there if we needed to talk to them. But yeah, after the first maybe 1 to 3 days, we were just in shock at everything that was going on. I mean, we knew that COVID was bad, but until we saw that in the hospital, we saw ventilators all over the hospital, you know, until we really got in there and started doing it. And then, you know, and it was still tough because there was a lot you could do to help the patients. We were throwing everything at them, and they were just so sick. So
I think for us, that was the most shocking thing, was the magnitude of illness. You know, we're used to seeing people who are sick. We've taken care of people who are on ventilators, but seeing that it wasn't just older people or just people with comorbidities. I mean, it was across the spectrum. It was families, it was colleagues, it was, you know, these people in the hospital are taking care of, you know, their peers that are physicians and nurses and nutritionists, and they're dying like right in front of them. And so I think seeing that, you know, because when you go in, you wonder, you know, what am I going to see? What's this going to be like? And you think of all these scenarios in your head, and you think about what you see when you're sitting at home on your couch and you're watching the news, and you say, well, gosh, this is just so extreme. I mean, like, you think maybe this is blown out of proportion a little bit. But when you go to a community, and we weren't in New York City, we were in a small community in New Jersey. It's called Belleville. It's like 35,000 people, houses, families. You know, being in New York City a lot with my family, and, you know, there's places in New Jersey that remind me of East Tennessee. There's, you know, hills and trees, and, you know, it's not everybody just on top of each other. And I think we get this idea in our head that, oh, it's only happening to really heavily populated areas. Granted, it's not far from New York, but it was one of those areas that didn't see a lot of cases. They actually have furloughed a lot of their staff. And then within about a week or so, it was like exponential cases to the point where they just were, I think, at 125% capacity.
yeah.
You know, I've changed my idea very quickly that this has not been overblown. In fact, I would even venture to say that the news isn't allowed to show us enough of some of these places. And granted, it's not global, it's not everywhere, but if it's your family and it's your community and it's your town and it's your colleagues, I mean, that's pretty devastating, you know?
Yeah, and I would add too, another thing that was frustrating is everything that Danielle had said, but too, we had this impression we were going to go in and really help these folks, and it was hard for us to, I mean, we were throwing everything at them, you know, everybody upon ER admission was getting the, Plaquenil or either azithromycin, doxycycline, convalescent plasma if needed, everything we were throwing at them, and they didn't see any improvement with anything. And so once we realized, that it's going to be hard for us to change, they either kind of do a turnaround or they just get worse. That was difficult, I think, to swallow, but
I think it's humbling. I think you feel very human. You go in, and as providers, our job is to try to make people better. And you go in, you go, oh my gosh, am I even doing anything? I mean, we went through this kind of period of frustration, and we had the opportunity to drive to work together and go back to the hotel together and kind of talk about our day. And that, I think, was the biggest frustration, that we felt so meager. We felt like what we were doing was just kind of chipping at a little piece of this huge mountain, and it wasn't really doing a whole lot. But I will say that everyone who worked there was very appreciative of the extra help. And when we talked to our pulmonologist, and we kind of were, are we doing something wrong? Should we be doing something more? He said, no, what we're doing is we're trying to support them the best we can with oxygen and the tools that we have, and hope that their body can actually fight off this virus, because it's so novel. We don't know anything about it. We don't know what works, what doesn't, why it attacks certain people a certain way, and why maybe their spouse at home recovered without hardly any symptoms, right? It's really unbelievable.
Yeah, and they felt the same way as we did. They
felt the frustration.
Yeah, they all felt the frustration too. So it was tough.
Yeah, I cannot imagine. I'm a hypochondriac, so
it would not be a good place for you.
You guys do a job that absolutely terrifies me on a daily basis. So you have my utmost respect just by being brave enough to be nurse practitioners.
Some would say we're just crazy, which is a possibility. So.
Most people don't understand. I, on the other hand, I know personally, I've been trying to read through all of the, not fake news, but things that maybe, like you said, been blown out of proportion, or things that aren't being given to us the whole truth, or maybe lies, and trying to figure out exactly what you can do. And for me, that's a daily struggle. I just went to Ingalls, and it's so strange to me how life just immediately flipped, because even in this town, in Athens, we just had the life care.
Right. Yeah. Lots of cases. Yeah.
And so not only up until that point, I didn't know anyone personally who had the disease. And now one of my childhood friends, her grandmother has it. And so it's just, it's so strange how quickly your perception can be changed. And as a hypochondriac, listen, I don't want to mess with anything to do with it. I don't even want to talk about it. Look, I'm flushing. So I cannot imagine. To know that you all, I think I would say brave, because I would never do something like that. I think it's so brave and humbled. I'm so humbled. If you all were humbled, imagine me. I'm so humbled to know that.
Thank you. Able really nice.
I mean, hey, y'all. I mean, this is the point where, you say, being human. I think that's come up more than not. Being anyone. It doesn't discriminate. It has a plan in mind. It doesn't matter if you run every day. It doesn't matter if you drink every day. It's something that we can't prepare, like you said.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I was gonna say, you basically answered this question, but let me read it, because I want you all to hear this one. I think a lot of people who have been seeing anything on the front lines are being fed kind of the information and are probably curious to see how different it is than what we think, I guess, what our perception is. It's such I think, until you see it like you all have, it's such a strange thing to try to imagine, a war front, basically, with an unseen kind of thing. So is there anything that you have that you can say about kind of what that looks like, and what it's like to be in the thick of it? Obviously there's frustration and things like that. Is there anything else that you all can say that's kind of I don't know, I don't want to say like new information, but stuff that's not being talked about that is obvious?
You know, for me, something that I thought was, that's not being talked about enough was, you know, those nurses and, you know, CNAs and everybody at that hospital. You know, it's interesting how they adjusted to the situation that they're in and continue to come in day and night. You know, we were there for 2 weeks. You know that they're scared. One of the nurses said she just had nightmares before she went to bed at night, but they still show up and they work their tails off to maximum capacity. And you know, they're in the midst of it all, and they keep showing up. They're exhausted and they don't get any sick time, vacation time off. We were listening to one of the nurses on the phone with another nurse trying to get, you know, more people in, and they were like, I'll figure it out. I'll find someone to watch my kids, you know, I'll be there. And this hospital we were at was just amazing. And I feel like even Danielle and I were talking about how they adjusted to the situation, and we even adjusted to that situation. You kind of, not that we got used to it, because we were always aware that COVID was everywhere from head to toe in the hospital. After, you know, you kind of go into this zone where you do what you got to do, and hats off to all those healthcare providers that are up there, and they're absolutely amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the first 3 days, I think for us, it's like, okay, so we had the shock factor a little bit on the front end, you know, and when you see the tent set up, or you've seen like the news might flash to where like people are in beds next to each other. Like, I mean, it's real. People are on ventilators next to each other. There is no room in the ICU. So they have to put people in wherever they can put them, you know, and try to take the best care that they can. And they had an extra anesthesiologists and CRNAs and nurse practitioners and, you know, people from all over coming to help this facility that needed so much help. But everybody was just supportive of each other. We didn't, you know, I think for us, like I try to think like, what if this happened to one of our local facilities, and ones that we're very accustomed to, and we know the nursing staff, we know the physicians, and like, how would we handle it? And I just think that I would like to think that sometimes situations like this that are devastating and stressful, and they can bring out different things in people, but I think it really brought out a lot of good in humanity, and as far as, you know, how they were able to come together and help each other and work hard and try to take care of people. And, you know, we felt the grief with them, you know, while we were there. You know, a physician died on the vent, a nurse who was within just months of retirement, she died on the ventilator. And, you know, and to see that they were like, oh my gosh, you know, she was gonna retire in 2 months, and they're feeling so much pain and grief over that loss, and realizing that this was somebody that they worked with for years. I mean, that's,
yeah, I mean,
you know, we never had that personal connection with her.
But
we were feeling that, so imagine what they feel.
And I know, I would love to give more attention, you know, to them, because we were there for 2 weeks, and yes, that was great, but gosh, could you imagine living it day in and day out? That's your friends, your family members, and they were just amazing.
So I think that the front lines thing, I think that what was really good for me, because I thought I was going for one reason, but I think it really turned out to be a different reason. I think it brought a lot of things to my attention, as far as who am I as a person? What can I improve on as being a part of the human race? And, you know, what could we all do to maybe be a little bit better? And I think one thing is, you know, we should be thankful where we live, first of all, because we're not hard hit. And, you know, does that mean that it's going to stay that way? I mean, absolutely not. There's nothing certain in this world, right? But I think gratefulness is really important. And I think being respectful and supportive of each other. You know, it's very hard in the day of social media. You see all the opinions out there, you know, and you see it even from healthcare professionals. You know, a respiratory therapist saying, well, I don't know what the big fuss is. We have all these extra ventilators that are just sitting here in storage. And I think about up there, they actually were having a company who is making ventilators, a ventilator I've never seen before. Like, we didn't even know how to operate them at first until somebody showed us. I mean, so, you know, it's like feast or famine, right? But just because you're on the side of the feast right now doesn't mean that someone else isn't experiencing the famine. And so if you're able to help and you have the means to do so, help. If you know, can do something to help somebody else who's in that situation, I mean, we should all try to do that. And, you know, just understand that even if you're not in the position where you can go and help, you know, be respectful and supportive of the fact that it is happening to people. And we're all humans, and, you know, and so I think that it's easy to live in our bubble And I think it taught me that, hey, the world is bigger than Knoxville, Tennessee. And even though, you know, my family lives up there and I've seen it, this was a different New Jersey for me to see. This was the side of New Jersey I had never experienced before, and a whole different community I had never experienced before. So, you know, it really brings things to light. It really makes you realize, you know, what life is about. And, you know, we're all human and there's pain and suffering out there. And, you know, empathy is important.
Yes.
Well, and this is a good question for me, and I think everyone else. But those of us who are practicing social distancing or going to continue, because who knows about all of the mandates? I know that right now, I think is like May 15th that things start opening back up. I have no idea, and I think that's I put that out of my me circle now, so like I can't control when that date will change. But I think that hearing from you all exactly what you think about social distancing, and there are ways that we can improve the way that we social distance after you've seen the front lines. I think that I love that everyone is making their own masks and taking control of their own environment like that. I think that's really powerful that people have taken that upon themselves. But I just wanted to know what's your all's advice for social distancing and staying healthy right now, if there's anything that you all can say to that.
Well, I think that number one, we know for a fact that if you protect yourself and someone else is protecting themselves, that you'll have less chance of transmitting something. Now, the masks are not N95s. We understand that. They're not foolproof. I mean, we get that. We know that washing hands really super important. And that's even before this whole COVID-19 pandemic, right? I think for me, you know, when I see people out there who are just refusing to wear masks, they feel like the government is telling them they have to. I said, well, you're kind of looking at it wrong, because what you're doing is not necessarily for yourself, but then maybe you're also protecting someone who can't protect themselves. Mm-hmm. And so does it hurt you to wear a barrier? It's not painful. You know, does it look funny at first? It feels weird. Quite frankly, if you go into Kroger with a mask on, it feels weird the first time you do it. But as you do it, it kind of becomes habit. Now, we're terrible at social distancing, the two of us, because we basically live together at this point. We work together. We just came back from New Jersey together. You know, this is not what we do. We don't see our friends. We thankfully do have each other for support, and it is nice from a mental standpoint to have that person that you can, you know, interact with, because as humans, I think we do need that social interaction. But I think, you know, I think about my daughters, you know, college, someone who's in a sorority, living in a sorority house, and, you know, she had that social outlet, and now she's home, you know, and just finished online school. And then my youngest, who's a senior in high school, who's not going to have prom, likely not going to have graduation, all those milestones. And they social distance like champs. I mean, they understand that the more people that they let into that smaller circle, and it's not living in fear, it's just being conscientious, that you have increased risk of transmission. And it's not necessarily because they're scared that they're going to get sick. They talk about, oh my gosh, if I, you know, am carrying this because you and my husband, he was an ICU nurse. He actually travels and takes care of COVID patients, and is also a Tennessee Wesleyan alum, actually. You know, they understand that maybe they're carrying it and they don't realize it. And then they are with, you know, 6 friends, and then those 6 friends maybe have a grandparent that lives in their house, right? Once again, what we saw was very interesting is it wasn't just older people who were contracting the illness. We even had people who were in their 30s and 40s who got very ill. So, but for them, you know, they are thinking about, well, how is this affecting maybe someone 2 or 3 or 4 degrees from me, not me. And I think if we all had that mindset that this isn't about me or what I look like, or is this comfortable for me when I go and do my quick run into Kroger, you know, it's important. Do I believe that, the economy at some point we're going to have to get things up and running, but I think we also have to be conscientious about how we do that and try to maintain appropriateness as we do that, and be respectful of the fact that other people, you know, need to stay as healthy as they can too, because there are people out there who have, you know, chemotherapy that they have to have, you know, they have immunosuppressive states, and you know, and people who otherwise, you know, could get really sick from this. And, you know, I think it's important to just be mindful of that and not think about, well, how does it affect me? How is it affecting someone else? And does it hurt you to do it? It doesn't hurt. Is it hard to do things differently and not, you know, we were super social before all this, and I haven't seen my closest friends in almost 2 months.
It's so
And we live a mile apart, you know, but we just don't see each other because it's just the right thing to do right now.
It's just about putting others before yourself. I think that's what it boils down to. It's not necessarily, it's just putting other people before yourself when it comes to trying to be aware of everything.
And I think also it's a good time to look at the silver lining of things. I mean, you know, we try to think about, well, what are we thankful for? And being able to have that time together at home, you know, has been really special. And even though we all miss our friends, we all miss our regular ways of living, you're able to find the positives and being able to kind of share that time together and do things that are more productive. I mean, I always say, gosh, I'm working out more, we're cooking from scratch more, we're doing all these things that are actually positive, you know, well-being things. And it would kind of happen by accident just because we've been home more, you know?
I just changed the dynamic.
What did you say? You've changed?
Yeah, the family dynamic.
Oh, yeah.
It does, yeah.
Like I'm home with my parents. And it's been really nice. I went away for 4 years to school, graduated, came back. And so it's been really nice for me, like, to be back around my parents. So I really understand. It's different, but I think, like you said, there is a silver lining. And I'm happy that it's not just me being rose-colored glasses swearing, you know, trying to look at the brighter side of things. But I really do feel like it's completely opposite of my family dynamic.
Yeah.
Well, what do they say? Perception is reality. And I think that is true oftentimes. I mean, and, you know, my youngest and I have this conversation often because life is stressful, especially when you're a senior in high school and she's having to make these big decisions. And, you know, some days you handle things really, really well and you feel positive about things. And there's some days where nothing really changed, but how you feel about what's happening has changed. And I think that, you know, with this whole situation, we can't really look at it as like, what are we? Oh yeah, go for it. We can't look at it as like, what are we missing out on? What are we not able to do? Is, well, what can we do with this situation? What can we do that's better for our lives and our families and our friends and the world, right?
Yeah.
Well, ladies,
I'm so
I'm so thankful for both of you. Personally,
that's so nice.
Oh, we lost.
Oh, I'm so
We
sorry.
lost.
Sorry, I live nowhere. So my Wi-Fi tends to be kind of temperamental. But I just wanted to say that we're praying for you. And we're thank you guys so much. And know that you always have a home with the Bulldogs. And I'm so glad I got to meet you guys.
Thanks.
After all of this in person, after all of this calms down and we can safely meet.
Yes.
I hope you all have a blessed evening, and thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to answer some questions.
Thank you for this opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys, I really do hope to see you soon.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.